Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Let's go and check out 10 WWE wrestlers who were extremely difficult to work with.
Why, Elizabeth? Because you can't beat me. You're wrong. No, you can't. Man, don't touch me. You can't beat me.
10
Oh,
WWE
yo.
wrestlers who were extremely difficult to work with. Number 10, The Cat. The Cat had various roles during the WWE Attitude Era, and a final role in the company saw her enter into a feud with Right to Censor. Unfortunately for Cat and her fans, the angle was abruptly dropped when she was fired from the company. It was reported that the Cat was extremely difficult to work with backstage, and the creative team had done nothing but complain about how much of a nightmare she really was.
Oh my god.
Now, the Cat wasn't exactly a main eventer, and she was in no position to be making life difficult for anyone. The Cat's firing led to her real-life husband, Jerry the King Lawler, walking out of the WWE for what he claims was an unjust firing. However, with the WWE never bringing the Cat into the mix in any capacity, it certainly gives merit to the claims of her backstage problems. Number 9, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
No
Being
way!
the top guy in wrestling allows a certain amount of power and sway.
didn't know
And for
that.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, he was prone to questioning every booking call and questioning every creative choice that was being made about his character. Whilst this may just sound like a wrestler who just cares about their body of work, Austin eventually became hard to deal with backstage, and even his close friend Jim Ross believes so. JR discussed Austin's attitude backstage during an episode of Grillin' JR.
I learned a long time ago, you keep your top guys happy, and that was very important in my role. And who was the bigger top guy than Stone Cold? So I did go out of my way to. And Steve was not an easy manage. He was challenging because even to me, you know, he had questioned the booking at times and so forth.
He also went on to share.
I have a feeling that he is the type of guy who always thinks that he's right, that he is smarter than anyone else, wiser than anyone else, stronger than anyone else. And he does show that in a way in his persona and character status. That's why we love him. But I feel like in cases when you have to work with him professionally, that might be terrible. And if he wasn't pulling the numbers, probably he would be even fired.
Story of Austin not wanting to work with Mark Mero.
I remember once he had the same issue with Mark Mero. He didn't want to work with Mark Mero. He didn't think Mark Mero was up to speed, and Steve wasn't ready in that time of his career to make guys in that respect. He wanted them made before he got them, so they could go out and have a good match and tell a good story.
There were countless
kinda
incidents of Austin acting in this manner, and the year 2002 was an infamous year for him, as it saw him butt heads with WWE creative on more than one occasion. Number 8, Buff Bagwell. When a wrestler debuts in a new promotion, it's vital that they make a great first impression. When it came to Buff Bagwell, who joined WWE following the WCW buyout of 2001, he did everything imaginable wrong. Bagwell came into the company with a massive attitude problem, and his behavior made everyone from the WWE staff members to the actual talent completely resent him. Bagwell was late to shows without showing any remorse, and he was even faking injuries, a major no-no in the world of wrestling. In the space of a few short months, Bagwell had alienated himself from the entire locker room thanks to his own malicious actions, and it was hardly a surprise that WWE cut ties with him indefinitely only after 2 matches in the company. Number 7, The Miz. The Miz deserves a ton of credit for always being 100% authentic. When he first arrived in WWE, his bold and brash personality caught the locker room off guard, and this instantly led to problems. The Miz stood out when compared to the rest of the wrestlers, and his personality was interpreted as being cocky, and due to The Miz being a complete rookie,
That's him,
wrestlers and
though.
WWE staff members
we like
questioned
about
what The Miz had to be cocky about. The Miz was
Yeah.
pretty much hated by all the top guys in the company, and he was even at one stage kicked out of the locker room. The Miz worked
Like his
endlessly
shirt.
though to change this perception around. He showed the world that he genuinely cared about pro wrestling and that he was going to be easy to work with in all areas. Additionally, over time, it became apparent that the
changed
Miz's
for the better.
personality that so many had issues with was his genuine personality. That's who he was, and that's who he is still to this very day.
Yeah.
Ultimately, The Miz went from the most hated man backstage to one of the most favored. The Miz in today's
Oh,
WWE
okay.
locker room is one of the most celebrated and beloved names around, and it's hard to find a single
love
wrestler
that
that has a
change.
negative word
I
to say about
love
him,
it.
and for good reason. Number 6, Sable. Wrestlers having an
yeah.
issue with dropping their respective title isn't anything new. However, when asked to drop the title to a name that helped make you relevant, then it's definitely an issue. Sable was one of the hottest stars in pro wrestling in the late 90s, and she was easily the most popular name in the women's division. The problem was that Sable couldn't wrestle, as she could barely take any bumps, and every single match that she was involved in was met with overwhelmingly negative reviews. The only reason that Sable was even able to step foot in the ring was due to the iconic Luna Vachon, who had a hand in training her. But Sable was detested backstage by the locker room. She was hard to deal with, and the WWE creative team would have a tough task working with her, and she would even refuse to drop the title to Shawn
like
in
Pamela
1999.
Anderson back then.
This resentment mainly came from the superiority complex that Sable had, and this was a complex that wasn't remotely justified. This would anger wrestlers and writers backstage in today's wrestling, so it's easy to imagine just how hostile everyone's behavior was towards her during the wild days of the Attitude Era. Number 5. The Ultimate Warrior.
Man.
During his various WWE runs,
Such a
the Ultimate Warrior
guy,
acquired a rotten reputation backstage. And this reputation stated that he was selfish, hard to deal with, and some would say an egomaniac. Warrior liked to operate by his own rules, and he rarely connected with wrestlers or key members of the creative team, and this often resulted in significant problems backstage. There are endless stories of Warrior's behavior backstage being shared publicly, but one rare story is from 1996. Warrior returned at WrestleMania 12 to take on Triple H, who was using his Hunter Hearst Helmsley persona at the time. The idea behind the match was a competitive match that would showcase both men. However, on the day of the show, Warrior cancelled the idea and decided that he wanted to squash the future head of creative. WWE executive Bruce Pritchard would share this story on his podcast.
It was never meant to be the short match that it became. Warrior changed it that day. I think Jerry Briscoe was the agent, and Warrior was like, no, this is the match we're going to do. And went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And at that point, it's get the match in the ring. And Hunter was a pro and was like, let's just go do what we got to do and move on. We'll deal with all the other shit afterwards.
The WWE had so many names willing to talk negatively about their experiences with Warrior backstage that in 2005, they released a hit piece documentary focused on his bad behavior. The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior was the title of the documentary. However, due to the WWE and Warrior making amends in his final years, the documentary is very hard to find. Number 4. Triple H. Triple H is currently the head of WWE Creative, yet during his time as a full-time wrestler, he made a lot of enemies backstage. Triple H didn't conduct himself in the best manner, and he was often prone to using his power to manipulate WWE Creative into his set vision. This became hard for those backstage as Triple H started to be seen as a selfish man who was only trying to make himself look good. During the 2000s, it's believed that Triple H impacted the pushes of both Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy. This type of behavior would have naturally made the WWE creative department's job difficult, as they couldn't exactly argue with the chairman's son-in-law. Thankfully, the game managed to break away from this kind of behavior in his later years, and the Triple H that currently leads WWE couldn't be more different. Number 3. Enzo Amore. Now, it took a matter of months from Enzo Amore's main roster debut for reports to surface relating to his behavior. The main roster crew hadn't exactly become members of the Amore fan club since they began to work with him, and his behavior was rubbing everyone backstage the wrong way. It got so severe that in 2017, Roman Reigns had to legitimately kick Amore off the tour bus. This type of thing never happens in modern wrestling, so it spoke volumes in relation to how Amore was acting backstage. It was even claimed that Neville refused to lose to Amore on Raw, and this led to Neville walking out of the company and for him to never return. Simply put, Amore's antics and behavior towards people backstage made him impossible to work with. Number 2. Randy Orton. Now, in recent years, Randy Orton has emerged as a locker room leader and someone that the modern-day wrestlers can look up to. But that wasn't always the case, as it wouldn't be hyperbolic to say that Orton used to be a living nightmare in the locker room. Orton had vast anger issues, and he was said to be awful to deal with both from a management and talent perspective. Orton would often use his standing in the company to damage people's careers. Orton would be heavily involved in the WWE release of Mr. Kennedy, and who can ever forget when Orton managed to get Kofi Kingston's major WWE push cancelled in 2010. Unlike a lot of names who weren't exactly beacons of light in the backstage area, Orton admitted that he made mistakes in the past, and his personal development over the past decade needs to be acknowledged. And number 1, Shawn Michaels. It's been public knowledge for years that Shawn Michaels was public enemy number 1 backstage in the 90s. Outside of HBK's close friends, he was loathed by other talent and anyone who worked backstage. HBK walked into the backstage area every week with an attitude, and he didn't care who he had to step on to stay on top. An example of how HBK acted during the 90s can be seen with the verified story of One Night Only. The initial plan was to see Bulldog defeat HBK in the UK, but HBK managed to gaslight and manipulate Vince McMahon into changing the finish. Also, all you need to see is that Sunny interview, and you knew that HBK had some power backstage. Now, HBK didn't even need to win the match, and there was no benefit from him winning. He simply just didn't want to put over another talent. And in 1998, when HBK was set to retire, WWE planned for him to lose the WWE title to Stone Cold Steve Austin in the main event of WrestleMania. Due to HBK's abysmal reputation backstage, there was legitimate and justified concern that HBK wasn't going to refuse to lose. Thankfully, he went through with the planned finish, but he didn't exactly look happy doing the honors. However, when he returned in 2002, the old habits had magically disappeared, and 2002 HBK was a stark contrast to the HBK of the 90s. But there you have it, folks. 10 WWE wrestlers who were extremely difficult to work with.
Some of these names proved today that they are different, and a major reason for it would be age. I feel like the older we get, the less egotistical we get, and the less really bombastic. You know, we have more patience, we understand, we have more empathy, and also we don't overreact about everything, because life kind of like beats us down and experience, and we kind of realize like, yeah, we don't need to go that hard on some things, you know. And yeah, and you get more professional as well, because you appreciate some of these experiences and some of these things that you have, because once you lose it after you are young and really successful, and then once you lose it and then you come back, you kind of appreciate it more, because you know you are maybe not in your prime anymore, or you know that what was once might not happen again, so you appreciate everything you have for the experiences you have. So yeah, I think that's a big reason. Let me know what you think in the comments.